My former company terminated my position to replace me with an artificial intelligence suite to save $130,000, completely ignoring the federal statutory mandate requiring a certified human signature on heavy industrial manifestations. So, I quietly gathered my personal belongings, archived one crucial legal document on a dusty shelf in the basement, and watched from a distance as their $340 million corporate merger turned into a radioactive regulatory disaster. This was not a sudden confrontation born out of loud arguments or slammed doors. It took place inside a climate-controlled executive boardroom lined with mahogany panels and stocked with imported sparkling water. At exactly 9:15 on a cool Tuesday morning, I sat in my accustomed place, near the end of the long conference table, my leather notebook open and my pen resting parallel to the spine. At 54 years old, I felt composed and remarkably confident. I had just finalized the preliminary internal audit for our upcoming heavy manufacturing compliance review, and for the fifth consecutive year, Titan Heavy Industries was positioned for zero regulatory nonconformities. In the heavy industrial steel sector, zero nonconformities is not merely a statistical metric. It is an operational miracle. It signifies that no worker suffered a severe injury, no environmental containment was breached, and federal inspectors had no cause to issue shutdown orders against our processing gates. I surveyed the executive leadership seated around the room. Sitting near the head of the table was Harold Vance, the chief executive officer, a man I had worked alongside for 12 years. We had navigated economic downturns together, back when the plant had to reduce shifts, and Harold had sat in his office worrying about keeping the blast furnaces burning. Seated nearby was Silas Miller, our veteran vice president of plant operations, who possessed decades of practical metallurgy experience and knew the precise thermal thresholds of every structural alloy we forged. And then, standing at the head of the table, was Brandon Vance, the chief executive's 31-year-old nephew. Brandon had been appointed vice president of digital transformations 6 months prior in a 70-year-old heavy manufacturing enterprise. Nobody on the operational floor understood what his official title entailed, though most assumed it meant upgrading software licenses and improving network bandwidth in the fabrication sheds. We were mistaken. Brandon did not possess the demeanor of a steelworker. He resembled an aggressive tech consultant from Silicon Valley trying to market a mobile application. He wore tailored designer suits with casual sneakers, carrying a wireless presentation clicker and a practiced smile that failed to reach his eyes. His wrist bore a smart watch that vibrated constantly with notifications he inspected every 30 seconds. He had no calluses on his hands, nor did he carry the permanent industrial grit under his fingernails that the rest of us scrubbed away each evening. "Gentlemen," Brandon announced, his tone polished and devoid of the weathered resonance common to men in our industry. "We are confronting an acute crisis of operational stagnation. Titan Heavy Industries remains a slow-moving dinosaur in an era of rapid technological disruption. We must cultivate agility, accelerate output, and most importantly, eliminate the costly friction of legacy overhead." He clicked the button in his palm, and the digital projector displayed a slide titled Streamlining Legacy Infrastructure, Phase 1. A large red section on the pie chart was designated Compliance and Regulatory Supervision. "I have spent the past quarter analyzing our internal cost structures," Brandon continued, pacing the perimeter of the room like a public speaker, "and the figures are frankly embarrassing. We are allocating nearly $260,000 annually toward a department that generates zero physical output. Compliance is a secondary support mechanism. It is a cost center that creates unnecessary procedural bottlenecks and delays production timelines. In the contemporary era of artificial intelligence, traditional human compliance is fundamentally obsolete." My chest tightened as I listened. I turned to look at Harold Vance. Surely the chief executive officer would intervene. Harold understood the scope of my responsibilities. He knew that generating regulatory documentation was actually forging legal armor that shielded the company from federal intervention and catastrophic operational holds. Yet Harold avoided my gaze, maintaining intense focus on the label of his sparkling water bottle. Therefore, Brandon declared, smiling as though bestowing a magnificent favor upon the board, I have integrated an automated governance suite. This software scrapes Federal Register updates, recalibrates internal protocols, and submits official compliance reports automatically. It functions faster, operates continuously, and requires neither a salary nor health insurance benefits. He clicked to the subsequent slide, revealing an updated organizational chart. My name, Harlan Cross, was displayed in bright red text with a thick strike-through line across it. Effective immediately, Brandon proclaimed, the position of Chief Compliance Officer is eliminated. Harlan, we acknowledge your years of service. But the enterprise is pivoting toward a leaner framework. This structural modification alone saves the organization $115,000 in base salary, plus an additional $15,000 in healthcare and retirement contributions. That capital will be immediately redirected to expand our digital marketing initiatives. The boardroom fell entirely silent. The hum of the air conditioning unit remained the only audible sound, alongside the distant, rhythmic thrum of the drop forge vibrating through the concrete foundation beneath our feet. I did not raise my voice, nor did I slam my notebook shut. I remained motionless, my pen resting over the paper. The disrespect was delivered with such casual arrogance that it felt surreal. He was equating 12 years of maintaining federal compliance, protecting worker safety, and shielding the enterprise from federal prosecution to a minor marketing budget reallocation. Is our discussion concluded? I inquired softly, keeping my voice steady and measured. Brandon blinked in mild surprise, clearly expecting an emotional outburst. Yes, HR has prepared your severance documentation. We will require your security access card prior to your departure today. I capped my pen. Human Resources transmitted my separation paperwork 4 hours after the meeting. They were in such a hurry to meet Brandon's administrative deadline that they misspelled my surname on the severance agreement, writing Harlan Cross instead of Harlan Cross. I signed the paperwork without complaint. I packed my personal coffee mug, the framed photograph of my son Wyatt, and my grandfather's mechanical slide rule. I walked out of the corporate headquarters at 5 o'clock sharp. The late afternoon sun was setting over the industrial skyline, turning the exhaust plumes from the processing plants into deep amber. I experienced a profound sense of calm. I was no longer responsible for maintaining the operational safety of Titan Heavy Industries. I had initialized the legal timer. Now my only task was to observe. To understand why this corporate betrayal cut so deeply, one must understand my background. I spent 14 years serving in the Navy Civil Engineer Corps as a CB officer. I constructed fortified staging bases in harsh environments, managed heavy equipment logistics, and evaluated structural integrity under intense pressure. My entire professional philosophy was shaped by a fundamental reality. Physical structures naturally tend toward failure under environmental elements, stress, corrosion, and material fatigue. My duty was to prevent collapse, inspect stress tolerances, and ensure that when heavy equipment traversed a bridge, the structure held firm against physical forces. When I concluded my military service, I transitioned from uniform to corporate attire, but the fundamental mission remained unchanged. In heavy steel manufacturing, the primary threat is not an external adversary, but physical laws and human negligence. Superheated liquid metal possesses zero regard for quarterly earnings targets. If an organization skimps on pressure relief valves or neglects containment protocols, catastrophic failures occur. If an enterprise ignores environmental disposal mandates under federal law, toxic runoff poisons the local water supply of the working community. I accepted the compliance position at Titan Heavy Industries 12 years ago because it was a grounded, honorable company. For over a decade, I constructed their regulatory oversight protocols from the ground up. I guided the firm through evolving federal standards, successfully managing 4 comprehensive federal audits with 0 citations. My archive was maintained with military precision. Every document indexed, verified, and cross-referenced. And then Brandon Vance entered the organization. Brandon represented a generation of executives who viewed operational history as mere baggage. At 31 years old, armed with an advanced business degree from a university that charged more for annual tuition than I earned in 3 years, he possessed 0 practical manufacturing experience. He had never observed a blast furnace pour, nor had he stood on a gantry feeling the radiant heat through protective visors. To him, heavy manufacturing was simply a collection of financial metrics on a tablet screen. He had arrived 6 months prior, brimming with the arrogance typical of individuals who have never faced real accountability. As the chief executive's nephew, his advancement was an obvious case of nepotism. His professional profile was saturated with terms like visionary, industry disruptor, and transformational leader. Our initial disagreement occurred in the executive break room 3 months after his arrival. I was brewing coffee when Brandon walked in. He did not offer a greeting, but looked at the coffee maker with mild disdain. "We could replace these traditional brewing units with automated single-serve pods," Brandon remarked without looking directly at me, "reducing energy consumption by 12% and eliminating cleanup time." "Single-serve pods cost 4 times more per unit," I replied calmly, "and generate substantial plastic waste unless a specialized recycling vendor is retained, which we currently lack." He turned to face me with a cold, scrutinizing gaze. He observed my graying hair, my off-the-rack suit, and my functional footwear. He did not see a seasoned professional with decades of engineering experience. He saw legacy friction. "You must be Harlan," he said, the internal policeman. "I am the chief compliance officer," I clarified. "I ensure this enterprise operates within federal law." He smirked dismissively. "The Department of Unnecessary Paperwork. You traditionalists are the primary reason manufacturing firms cannot adapt rapidly. Every time I propose an operational shift, I am required to complete 3 regulatory disclosures. Those disclosures prevent federal regulators from fining this facility $10,000 per day," I noted. Brandon laughed softly. "Regulations are merely guidelines, Harlan. In the modern tech ecosystem, successful leaders move fast and break things, then settle the fines later as a routine cost of doing business. In heavy manufacturing," I replied, my voice firm, "when you move fast and break things, you break human beings, and the cost of doing business becomes a fatal incident." His eyes narrowed. In that precise moment, I understood that I had become his adversary. I had questioned his philosophy. From that day forward, he viewed me not as an asset, but as an obstacle. Over the subsequent months, he systematically excluded me from strategic planning sessions, reduced my system authorizations, and made subtle comments during board meetings regarding bureaucratic inertia. He was preparing the executive team to view my department as an unnecessary financial burden. And Harold Vance, anxious to present impressive financial numbers prior to his own retirement, allowed his nephew to proceed. When the restructuring occurred, it was not merely a financial decision. It was personal. Brandon sought to demonstrate that traditional compliance expertise was irrelevant in an automated era. That evening, I sat in my living room when my phone rang. It was my son, Wyatt. Wyatt was 21 years old, a junior studying engineering and regulatory law at Carnegie Mellon. He possessed a sharp mind and had inherited my obsession with technical details. "Dad," Wyatt said, his voice laced with concern, "I received your message about leaving Titan Heavy Industries. What about my spring semester tuition? The academic scholarship covers 60%, but we still have remaining expenses." "Do not worry, son," I assured him calmly. "I have planned for this contingency." "But you are 54 years old, Dad," Wyatt noted carefully. "Regulatory time does not move in hours. It progresses through fixed statutory cycles." Day 22 arrived and passed without a sound inside Titan Heavy Industries. Because the executive board had failed to execute an official resolution appointing a certified human compliance officer, every environmental filing, safety validation, and quality certification submitted to federal authorities after my departure became legally void. By 45, I was in Ohio conducting an urgent regulatory audit for a specialized metal fabrication enterprise that had lost its compliance director. They were facing an upcoming state inspection and required immediate expertise. I reviewed their facilities, established updated safety manifests, and billed my standard fee of $340 per hour plus expenses. The client agreed to the terms without hesitation. While taking a brief break in the plan office, I observed a financial news segment playing on the wall monitor. The broadcast featured an interview regarding modern American industrial restructuring. Suddenly, Brandon Vance appeared on the screen, wearing a pristine hard hat without a single scratch or grease mark. He stood near Titan's primary casting floor, speaking animatedly into a microphone. "We have completely revolutionized our operational framework at Titan Heavy Industries," Brandon declared proudly, gesturing toward the plant background. "By eliminating redundant legacy friction and automating our regulatory supervision through artificial intelligence, we have expanded our operating margin by 4% in just 2 quarters. We are lean, agile, and prepared for global expansion." I quietly took a sip of coffee. Legacy friction. That was the term he had used to describe 12 years of meticulous regulatory defense. That executive appears entirely disconnected from floor operations, the Ohio plant manager remarked, standing beside me. "He possesses tremendous confidence," I replied neutrally. "Do you know him?" the manager asked. "I used to manage compliance for his firm," I noted briefly. By day 90, the legal situation reached a critical statutory threshold. Under federal industrial oversight statutes, financial penalties for operating without a designated compliance officer function on a multi-tiered scale. For the initial 90 days of noncompliance, the federal administrative penalty is set at $11,000 per day. While substantial, a major corporation might absorb such an expense as a temporary setback. However, once a violation surpasses 90 calendar days, without resolution, federal statutes presume that the enterprise is not merely negligent, but acting with willful disregard for statutory law. At that point, the daily penalty escalates dramatically to $35,000 per day, accumulating every single calendar day, including weekends and official holidays. I performed the mathematical calculations in my notebook while returning to Pittsburgh. For the initial 90 days of non-compliance, the fine totaled $990,000. From day 91 onward, $35,000 accrued daily. The undisclosed legal liability was growing like an invisible tumor within Titan Heavy Industries. And because the company had failed to appoint a certified successor, every commercial contract and shipping manifest issued during this timeframe was technically fraudulent. They were operating in direct violation of federal law under Title 18, Section 1001. On day 115, Wyatt called me after completing his midterm examinations. His tone was energized and confident. "Dad," Wyatt said, "I have some excellent news. I was accepted into the Accelerated Joint Program for Industrial Compliance and Environmental Law." I leaned back in my office chair, smiling. "Compliance law. I recalled how you once considered regulatory paperwork tedious." "I have been analyzing recent industry trends," Wyatt explained. "As multinational corporations acquire domestic manufacturing assets, the demand for specialists who understand both structural engineering and federal statutory law is soaring. My professor mentioned that starting compensation for certified compliance directors is exceptionally high." "He is a knowledgeable professor," I remarked. "Protecting organizations and maintaining operational integrity is essential work, son." "I realize that now, Dad," Wyatt replied softly. "You set a powerful example." On day 130, a major announcement broke across industrial media outlets. I was at O'Connor's Irish pub, having morning tea when Seamus slid the daily business publication across the counter. "Take a look at the front page, Harlan," Seamus suggested. The bold headline read, "Titan Heavy Industries reaches agreement for $340 million acquisition by Vanguard Steel Industries." I read the article carefully. It detailed how Vanguard Steel Industries, a prestigious German manufacturing conglomerate, had agreed to acquire Titan Heavy Industries for $340 million. Harold Vance was quoted extensively regarding Titan's modern operational efficiency, but Brandon Vance was highlighted as the architect of the deal. The article credited Brandon's elimination of redundant administrative functions as the primary catalyst for the acquisition. Vanguard Steel seeks streamlined, highly efficient operations. Brandon was quoted as stating, "Our automated governance model makes Titan the ideal acquisition target." $340 million, Seamus remarked, whistling softly. "That young executive must feel like he conquered the industry." "It is a tremendous financial figure," I agreed. "You appear remarkably calm," Seamus observed. "Most individuals would feel bitter seeing their former employer fetch that price right after dismissing them." I smiled, setting down my teacup. My grandfather served as a blast furnace foreman for 40 years, Seamus. He used to say that a hot furnace can melt iron, but if you fail to maintain the structural foundation, the entire plant collapses. What does that mean in this situation? Seamus asked. It means, I explained, that Brandon believes he sold a high-performance vehicle. But, in reality, he sold a machine with missing brake components, and he just invited a team of rigorous German auditors to inspect the engine. Do you believe the acquisition will fail? Seamus inquired. I know, I replied, standing up, that Vanguard's due diligence team arrives next week, and German compliance auditors are exceptionally thorough. The due diligence delegation from Vanguard Steel Industries arrived in Pittsburgh on day 150. Fastened professionals in dark suits, equipped with specialized auditing software and detailed regulatory checklists. I was reviewing a regulatory filing in my office above the pub when my cell phone rang. The screen displayed a local area code, but the voice on the line was instantly recognizable. Harlan Cross speaking, I answered. Good morning, Mr. Cross, the voice replied with a formal German accent. This is Otto Hoffmann from Vanguard Steel Industries. We met several years ago at the International Industrial Safety Conference in Chicago. I remember you well, Mr. Hoffmann, I replied. How may I assist you? We are currently conducting due diligence on Titan Heavy Industries, Otto explained, his tone serious and deliberate. I am standing in their basement records archive, holding a black 3-ring binder bearing your signature. Ah, I noted calmly, the archive binder on the 4th storage rack. Precisely, Otto confirmed. Mr. Cross, did you inform the executive leadership of the statutory requirements under Section 14.2 prior to your departure? I provided comprehensive documentation, I stated clearly. I updated the business continuity manual, archived the governing protocols, and maintained a complete paper trail. However, my position was eliminated during an executive restructuring to eliminate legacy friction. I was escorted from the premises before a formal transition could occur. Legacy friction, Otto repeated, his tone dry. And they attempted to automate the compliance function through software? That was their stated strategy, I affirmed. And no certified human replacement was ever appointed by the board, Otto asked. Not to my knowledge, I replied. Mr. Cross, Otto said softly, are you aware of their current financial exposure under federal penalty statutes? As of today, I calculated, accumulated penalties stand at approximately $3,615,000, excluding potential administrative fees. There was a brief pause on the line. And are you currently available for professional consultation? Otto inquired. I operate an independent compliance practice, I noted. My services are available. Please remain near your phone, Mr. Hoffmann requested. I am heading to the executive boardroom immediately. This afternoon will prove exceptionally revealing. The executive boardroom of Titan Heavy Industries was stocked with celebratory arrangements. It was Thursday morning, exactly 11 o'clock on day 165 of the violation. The final acquisition documents for the $340 million transaction were neatly arranged on the conference table, awaiting signatures. Chilled champagne rested on a side table. Brandon Vance wore a custom-tailored suit, checking his smart watch while calculating his executive bonus. Harold Vance sat nearby, looking relieved to finally conclude his tenure as chief executive officer. Suddenly, the boardroom doors opened. Dr. Erika Lindner walked into the room, accompanied by Otto Hoffmann, who carried the heavy black 3-ring binder. Neither auditor wore a smile. Otto walked directly to the head of the table and placed the black binder squarely atop the acquisition contract. The heavy thud quieted the room immediately. Who is Harlan Cross? Otto inquired, his voice echoing across the table. Brandon looked up, mildly irritated by the interruption. Harlan was our former compliance manager. We restructured his department 6 months ago to eliminate legacy overhead and transition to automated artificial intelligence governance. Restructured, Otto repeated, opening the binder. An interesting characterization. Is there a technical issue? Harold asked, his smile vanishing. The separation was finalized months ago. Everything is in order. Gentlemen, Otto declared calmly, according to federal regulatory registries, Harlan Cross remains listed as your sole designated responsible authority, And according to this official record, he remains the only human certified to validate your industrial compliance filings. Brandon gestured dismissively. That is merely a database delay. Our automated system handles internal compliance. Federal statutory law does not recognize artificial intelligence as a liable entity, Dr. Erica Lindner stated coldly, and compliance designations are never automatic. They require explicit board resolution within 21 calendar days under Section 14.2. Otto projected his tablet screen onto the boardroom display wall, revealing the statutory calculations. You have operated without a certified compliance officer for exactly 144 days past the statutory grace period, Otto explained. You have accumulated $3,615,000 in direct federal fines. Furthermore, every environmental clearance and safety manifest issued during this period is legally invalid. You have shipped thousands of tons of steel under fraudulent certification. Dr. Lindner stepped forward, her expression impassive. This constitutes severe material misrepresentation of corporate standing. You represented Titan Heavy Industries as fully compliant. You misled our acquisition committee. This is a minor administrative oversight, Brandon argued defensively, his face flushing red. We can resolve this immediately by appointing a new manager today. You cannot retroactively resolve federal statutory liability, Dr. Lindner stated firmly. Operating without valid authorization while issuing false compliance declarations is a catastrophic regulatory violation. Harold sat frozen, pale and speechless, staring at the figures displayed on the wall. Dr. Lindner closed her laptop with a sharp click. Vanguard Steel Industries hereby formally terminates all acquisition negotiations effective immediately. Brandon stood up abruptly. You cannot cancel a $340 million deal over administrative paperwork. The transaction is terminated, Dr. Lindner stated authoritatively. Our legal department is issuing a formal notice of withdrawal based on failed due diligence and material breach of warranty. What if we rehire Harlan Cross? Brandon pleaded desperately. We will double his previous salary today to resolve the compliance records. Otto looked up from his notes with a faint, discerning smile. I spoke with Mr. Cross earlier today. He operates a highly successful independent firm. Given his current market standing, I doubt your organization can afford his consultation fees. Otto retrieved the black binder, holding it firmly. Good afternoon, gentlemen. The German delegation exited the boardroom, leaving the acquisition contracts unsigned and the champagne unopened, while Brandon Vance stood motionless as his $340 million deal dissolved completely. The fallout from the canceled acquisition was immediate, public, and devastating for Titan Heavy Industries. The formal notice of withdrawal was released the following Monday morning. Written in precise legal terminology, the press statement announced that Vanguard Steel Industries had terminated acquisition proceedings due to material misrepresentations identified during regulatory due diligence. Titan's stock price opened down 19% at market open, as details regarding the unaddressed federal penalties leaked among financial analysts. Panic selling escalated, driving the stock down 36% by the closing bell. The corporation lost over $120 million in market capitalization in a single trading day. Financial publications covered the collapse extensively. The Regional Business Journal published a prominent feature titled $340 million Collapse. How Arrogant Efficiency Ruined Titan. The article dissected Brandon Vance's digital transformation strategy, exposing it as reckless cost-cutting disguised as technological innovation. One headline stood out: when legacy overhead is actually the retaining pin. On Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Dr. Erica Lindner. Good afternoon, Mr. Cross. Dr. Lindner greeted warmly. I am calling to discuss a professional engagement. Vanguard Steel Industries is restructuring its North American Regulatory Oversight Division. During our recent audit, we reviewed your documentation protocols. Mr. Hoffman characterized your archive binder as an absolute masterclass in corporate legal defense. I believe in maintaining thorough records, I replied. We wish to retain your firm, Dr. Lindner stated. We offer a 16-month contract to oversee compliance standardization across our 11 domestic production facilities. providing complete operational autonomy and a rate of $275 per hour. I accept the terms, Dr. Lindner, I replied calmly. The executive board at Titan Heavy Industries acted swiftly to contain the disaster. Harold Vance announced his immediate retirement, citing health reasons. Though industry insiders understood the board had forced his departure, Brandon Vance received no press announcement. He was summarily terminated by the board without severance and escorted from the building by security personnel on Friday afternoon. A week later, I received a text message from an unfamiliar number. Harlan, this is Brandon. I hope we can connect to discuss industry best practices. No hard feelings. Let me know if your consultancy is hiring. I read the message twice, considered replying, but ultimately deleted the text and blocked the contact. Military protocol dictates that one does not engage with unmitigated liabilities. 6 months later, Cross Crisis Compliance Recovery LLC relocated to a spacious suite in downtown Pittsburgh overlooking the river. My primary project involved establishing standardized safety and statutory protocols for thousands of industrial workers across 7 states. It was demanding, precise work, the exact structural responsibility Brandon had dismissed. But for me, it represented pure engineering integrity. Titan Heavy Industries was eventually liquidated, its production assets sold off to regional competitors at steep discounts. The former corporate headquarters was leased to a tech venture that ceased operations within a year. 1 year after the merger collapse, I sat in my new office reviewing an environmental compliance report when my phone rang. It was Wyatt. Dad, Wyatt said, his voice brimming with excitement. I just completed my final examinations for my dual degree. Congratulations, son, I replied, feeling immensely proud. And you will never guess what case study was featured in our advanced regulatory seminar today, Wyatt continued. Let me guess, I smiled. Section 14.2 of the Business Continuity Code, Wyatt laughed. Exactly. The professor referred to it as the Cross Protocol. He highlighted it as the textbook example of why institutional memory and certified human oversight remain indispensable. He told the class that the professional who understands why the system was built will always remain essential, while the executive who dismantles safeguards without understanding their purpose will inevitably cause catastrophic failure. That professor possesses exceptional wisdom, I remarked, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. I am proud of you, Dad, Wyatt said quietly. You maintained your integrity, adhered to protocol, and prevailed without ever raising your voice. I did not defeat them, Wyatt, I reflected, looking out at the steel bridges spanning the river, enduring and steady against the current. I simply allowed their own arrogance to run its statutory course. That evening, I walked down to O'Connor's Irish pub to celebrate. Seamus was closing up, wiping down the bar counter with the measured rhythm of a craftsman who had taken pride in his work for decades. Good evening, Mr. Cross. Seamus greeted with a warm smile, pouring a glass of dark stout. How is the new corporate suite? It offers an exceptional view of the river, Seamus, I replied. But the tea cannot compare to yours, Seamus chuckled. I was thinking about your grandfather's advice today. What was it he used to say about the blast furnace? He used to say, I replied, taking a slow sip, that a hot furnace can melt metal, but the craftsman who understands structural limits will always have a purpose. The man who assumes he can bypass physical laws without asking why will eventually be left standing amid the ruins. To structural integrity, Seamus said, raising his glass. To reading the fine print, I replied, clinking my glass against his glass. Business remains exceptionally strong. It simply required a $340 million lesson for the corporate world to realize that the quiet compliance officer in the corner office was the individual keeping the entire structure standing.